Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On Point Politics. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you like content just like this. Today, I'm going to be doing an analysis of the 2020 presidential election and what would have happened if there was no coronavirus at this period of time. The coronavirus definitely threw everything into a crazy national environment. We definitely got an alternate version of what the 2020 presidential election should have been like, and now we are going to be here to analyze what would have actually happened. Now, we are using the 538 model to essentially put something together. And what we get is Donald Trump getting 323 electoral college votes to Biden's 215. I have Biden winning 18 to 29-year-olds by 27 points. 30 to 44-year-olds go for Biden by 5. 45 to 64-year-olds go for Trump by 4 points. 65 plus goes for Trump by 7. The reason why I have it like this is because I actually suspect Trump would have done a little bit better with plus 65 voters without coronavirus, which would make sense considering that those were definitely, a group that were affected by the coronavirus a lot more, and may actually be the reason why Biden's probably holding some support with that demographic right now. College educated voters will go for Biden by only 16 points, so that's actually greater than what he even got in 2020. Non-college would go for Trump by about 7. They went for him by about 2 or 3 last time around. Female voters, that would be a big shocker. They would go for Trump by quite a bit because at this point the economy would be fine. So more prevalent social issues like abortion and things like that would be in full display. Males would definitely be +5 Trump. However, the white vote would be more significantly Republican. You would see Hispanics narrow up and African Americans narrow up just very slightly from the 2020 election. And you do see richer voters, 100K or more, slightly go slightly more towards Democrats as of right now. This gives Donald Trump an advantage in the electoral college. He wins the popular vote by around 2 points, and he's doing very well in the electoral college, as you can see here. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the demographic map that I have put together, as well as using a little bit of my own analysis to kind of think about what could have possibly happened for this presidential election as of right now. So we're going to be going from east to west, basically filling out all of these states. I think that Maine at large is something really interesting. I think that more than likely you would have seen Maine at large still be lean Democrat. I think that Biden would have probably gotten around 75 million votes. Donald Trump probably would have gotten like around 70 million. That you would have seen that because both bases would have been slightly less enthusiastic to turn out than what their 2020 counterparts actually were. So I think Maine at large probably would have gone lean Democrat. I actually do have it as lean Dem. It's around a 2.9 percentage point margin, very similar to what the actual margin was, by the way. And we're going to be leaving Maine's first in that likely Democrat column. For the state of Connecticut, I think that this probably would have been a likely Democrat state. I mean, it did go for Biden by a pretty safe amount, but I think a lot of those voters who turned out for Biden very heavy would have kind of sat home. I think New Jersey would have been likely, Rhode Island would have been likely, but Delaware probably would have been safe Democrat, especially since this is Biden's home state. So that's probably where I would have seen that race going as of right now. So Biden's at 146 electoral college votes. The state of Florida is interesting because Donald Trump actually made really good gains in the state of Florida. This was mostly due to the coronavirus lockdown, essentially. That's kind of what trended a lot of Cubans to the right in 2020. So I do actually think Florida would have been closer. It would have still trended to the right. It probably would have shifted right, but it probably would have been like a 2 point victory for Trump instead of it being like a 3.5 point win that he actually ended up getting in the real election. Iowa and Ohio would have been likely states. He probably would have won Ohio by 9 and would have won Iowa by 10. He would have probably gained with some white working class voters in this timeline, which puts him in good position in the Rust Belt as of right now. Illinois would have been safe Democrat in this scenario. I really don't suspect. I mean, Trump would have gained with African American voters, probably more in a state like New York, not so much in a place like Illinois. And a lot of white suburban women would have definitely trended heavy to the left here. Virginia would have still been a likely state, but it probably would have been D+8, D+9 in that scenario. Texas would have probably been like R+7. or +8. You would have seen a little bit of hemorrhaging of support, but you would have seen Texas vote to the right of Florida by a pretty big amount this cycle. And we'd also see Washington possibly be safe, but I think Oregon would have actually been a likely Democrat state as of right now. I think Colorado would have been likely, but it would have been much closer. I think it would have been like a 9 or 10 point win for Biden as of right now. And I think New Hampshire would have probably been a 3 or 4 point victory for Biden. It would have been significantly closer than what it actually was in the real timeline. Nebraska second, we'll get back to that one. I actually think New Mexico in this scenario would have been likely still, but it probably would have been like a 5 or 6 point win. Donald Trump would have done better with Hispanics nationwide. And so that's why you would see that state narrow up compared to the 2020 margin as of right now, and even an extent to the previous margin from 2016. Nebraska's second, I think Donald Trump would have been able to hold this very narrowly. He mainly lost here because he was very struggling with a lot of young voters and a lot of suburban voters. Even though I would see a lot of suburbanites still kind of move to Biden, you probably would have seen Nebraska's second be a tilt Republican district as of right now. I also think North Carolina would have probably been a 2.5 point victory for the former president. This gets him to 233. And then the state of Georgia probably would have gone tilt Republican. You would have seen that African American turnout still been very high for Biden, but Donald Trump would have had just enough African American support to probably narrowly overtake the state. Minnesota, you would have seen something similar. Biden probably would have won it by about 3 or 4 points. Now, I think in a state like Nevada, this is pretty interesting, but I think Biden would have still narrowly won this. This is a state that Biden just really had a good grip on in 2020. I expect Biden would have probably won the popular vote by around 2 or 3 as of right now, percentage wise. And so I think Nevada would have narrowly stayed with Biden in this scenario. So we do have a somewhat competitive election. I do think Arizona would have gone Democrat. I think the shifts from 2018 as well as the liberal trends in the state would have been way too much, and I think you would have had a lot less people be willing to vote for Donald Trump in the state of Arizona if it wasn't for COVID. I think Biden would have probably picked off the state by about 0.7 percentage points, which would have put him at around 243 electoral college votes. But now we see in a place like Wisconsin, Donald Trump would have probably narrowly picked that off. He would have improved in rural Wisconsin, but lost ground in some of the wild counties and some of the city areas. But he would have been able to slightly do better in a state like Wisconsin. Michigan is a very tough call. So we'll actually do Pennsylvania first. I actually think he would have had a better time winning Pennsylvania than Wisconsin. I actually think he wins Wisconsin or Pennsylvania by a lean margin. And the reason why I have him doing that is because in 2020 he already improved in the Philadelphia area, and you would have seen African American and Hispanic voters really trend towards Donald Trump this cycle. And I think Wisconsin would have been an interesting scenario because you probably would have seen a lot of older white voters move towards Biden to somewhat of an extent, and in a place like Wisconsin. So you would have seen that be more competitive than a state like Pennsylvania, where Trump would have expanded on his city gains from the real timeline, but also kept his rural base. So he probably would have actually done better in Pennsylvania. And Michigan is the final state on the map here. This one is a really tough one to call, but based on Biden's victory, I'm actually going to narrowly give it to Biden just because he was able to do pretty well in Michigan, and he was able to run the score up in the Detroit area. And so I do think Biden would have probably narrowly picked off Michigan in this scenario, but Donald Trump would have been able to win through Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Funny enough, if Wisconsin would have gone till Democrat, they actually would have tied in the Electoral College. But this is my official Electoral College map. If COVID never happened, Donald Trump would have gotten 279 Electoral College votes to Joe Biden's 259 Electoral College votes. If you guys disagree with my analysis, make sure to comment down below and subscribe to the channel if you like more content just like this, and make sure to hit the thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next video.